Lena had been working at the small restaurant for almost 2 years, and by now she knew every corner of the place. She knew which table wobbled a little, which chair squeaked when someone sat on it, and which light flickered when the air conditioner switched on. Her job was simple but tiring. She carried trays, cleaned tables, smiled at customers, and tried her best to keep everyone happy. Most days were the same busy hours, loud conversations, and long shifts that left her feet aching. Still, Lena never complained. She needed the job, and she had learned how to handle each day with patience. Most customers did not pay much attention to her. To them, she was just another waitress taking their order. They would wave at her without even making eye contact. Some treated her kindly, thanking her for good service. Others acted as if she did not exist at all. Lena had gotten used to it. She wasn't the type to demand attention anyway. She preferred staying quiet, doing her work, and keeping her personal life to herself. But there was one thing she always noticed. The old piano in the corner of the restaurant. It was a dark wooden upright piano. A little scratched, a little dusty, and almost always ignored. Most people assumed it was there for decoration. Some even rested their bags on it, using it like a shelf. But every time Lena saw it, something in her heart stirred. She would glance over at it while serving water or wiping a table. Sometimes she slowed down for just a second longer, hoping nobody noticed her eyes drifting toward the keys. But everyone was always too busy eating or talking to pay attention. The truth was, the piano meant something to her. It reminded her of a life she once had, a life she thought she had left behind forever. When she was younger, she had spent countless hours playing music. Her grandfather had taught her patiently, guiding her fingers across the keys, telling her that music could speak when words failed. But after losing him and facing family struggles, Lena had been forced to put her dreams aside. Now her life revolved around bills, work shifts, and making sure her family had enough to get by. Even though she still loved music deeply, she kept that part of her hidden. Nobody at the restaurant ever asked about her interests, and she never brought up the piano. It was easier to stay quiet. One evening, the restaurant was unusually crowded. A group of wealthy guests had booked the biggest table for a celebration. They arrived wearing fancy clothes, smelling of expensive perfume and loud confidence. They laughed loudly, talked over each other, and treated the staff like background noise. Lena politely greeted them and handed out menus, but the group barely looked at her as she was setting down glasses. One of the guests noticed her glance toward the piano. He raised an eyebrow and smirked. "You looking at that thing?" He said loudly enough for his friends to hear. "Do you even know how to play it?" The others laughed. Lena felt her cheeks warm, but she kept her voice steady. "I used to play," she said politely. One woman among the group let out a short, sarcastic laugh. "You? Play professionally? Come on, you're a waitress. Just focus on the food." Lena simply nodded and stepped back. She didn't want to argue. She had long learned that arguing with certain people only made things worse. She walked away, pretending she didn't hear the whispers and small jokes they made behind her. She returned to her usual tasks, but inside, a quiet sadness settled in her chest. That night wasn't the first time someone underestimated her. People often assume things about her based on her job or appearance. But she reminded herself that not every person needed to know her story. She was working hard for her family, and that was enough. Still, the comments hurt more than she liked to admit. As the evening went on, the restaurant became even busier. The owner had hired a musician for weekend nights to create a warm atmosphere, and tonight was supposed to be one of those nights. But as luck would have it, the musician canceled last minute due to an emergency. The manager was frustrated, pacing up and down the hallway behind the counter. "What am I supposed to do now?" he muttered. "This is a full house. And that special group came just for a proper evening experience?" Lena overheard him while placing a tray of glasses near the sink. She hesitated for a moment, feeling a nervous flutter in her stomach. Then, before she could talk herself out of it, she quietly approached him. "Sir?" "If you want, I can play," she said softly. The manager turned toward her with a confused expression, thinking he misheard. You can play the piano?" "Yes," Lena said gently. "If it helps tonight, I can try." One of the chefs, who had been walking by, overheard and let out a small laugh. "Lena, don't joke around. This is a serious evening." She gave a small smile, not offended, but a little embarrassed. "I'm not joking," she said. "I really can." The manager scratched his head, unsure. He had never seen her near the piano, never heard her mention music, and honestly couldn't imagine his polite, quiet waitress surprising an entire restaurant with a performance. But they were out of time, out of options, and the wealthy group was already complaining loudly. "Well, all right," he said finally. "If you're comfortable, you can try. Just keep it simple. Background music. Nothing too dramatic." Lena nodded, her hands shaking slightly. She wasn't nervous about playing. Playing was the part she trusted herself with. What scared her was the idea of doing it in front of people who didn't believe in her. But something inside her told her to be brave. Just this once. As she walked toward the piano, she felt every step. The restaurant seemed to grow quieter as people noticed her leaving her usual workstation. Some customers whispered, confused about why a waitress was heading toward the piano. A few waiters exchanged looks. The wealthy group smirked. Already assuming she was about to embarrass herself, Lena reached the piano and gently wiped a bit of dust from the keys. She sat down slowly, took a deep breath, and placed her fingers on the keyboard. The familiar coolness of the keys brought back memories: her grandfather's calm voice, the sound of her childhood home. The comfort of knowing music was always there for her. For a moment, she forgot about the restaurant. She forgot about the people watching and the long work shift ahead. All she felt was the piano beneath her hands. She closed her eyes and began to play. At first, the sound was soft, just a few light notes floating into the room. But soon the melody grew clearer, stronger, and more beautiful. Lena didn't hesitate. Her fingers moved with confidence and emotion, shaping the music as naturally as breathing. The restaurant fell silent almost instantly. Conversations paused, forks and knives stopped clinking, and even the staff turned to stare. People looked at her with surprise, confusion, and slowly respect. The wealthy guests who had mocked her earlier leaned forward, their expressions shifting as they realized she wasn't just trying. She was truly talented. Some customers whispered in disbelief. Where did she learn to play like that? Is she a professional? She works here? No way. Even the manager stood frozen, shocked at what he was hearing. Lena's music filled the whole room with warmth and emotion, something the customers hadn't expected from a quiet waitress. But Lena wasn't playing for attention. She wasn't trying to prove anything. She was simply expressing a part of herself she had kept locked away for years apart that still remembered joy, passion, and childhood dreams. And in that moment, everyone saw her differently. The moment Lena began playing, it felt as if the whole restaurant had taken a deep breath and forgotten to exhale. The soft melody coming from her hands didn't sound like something a waitress would play during a busy shift. It sounded like something from a concert hall, something shaped by years of practice, patience, and love. People who had been laughing loudly a minute ago suddenly went quiet. A young couple near the window put down their phones. Even the chef who earlier laughed at the idea of Lena playing stepped out of the kitchen doorway to listen. The wealthy group, sitting at the largest table, exchanged confused glances. They had expected to be entertained by a hired musician, not by the same person who had just served them water. One of the men who had mocked her earlier leaned back in his chair, his smile fading slowly. Another woman from the group watched with raised eyebrows, her expression changing from disbelief to curiosity. It was clear that none of them had expected this. Lena continued playing, and with each passing second, her confidence grew. The fear she had felt earlier faded away, replaced by something warm and familiar. She didn't think about who was watching or what they thought of her. She simply let the music flow. It had been years since she last played like this, but her fingers remembered every pattern, every shift, every movement. It felt like coming home after a long journey. The manager stood near the counter, stunned. He had worked with Lena for years and had never seen her show even a hint of this talent. She had always been quiet, hardworking, and humble. She never talked about her personal life and never asked for special treatment. Now, watching her transform the entire atmosphere of the restaurant, He felt a mix of shock and pride. He wondered how someone with such a gift could stay hidden for so long. Lena played one complete piece, and when she finally stopped, the restaurant remained completely silent for a moment. Then, as if everyone suddenly remembered how to breathe, the whole place erupted in applause. People clapped loudly, some even cheering. A few of the older customers wiped tears from their eyes. The wealthy guests who had made fun of her reluctantly joined in. Though their faces clearly showed embarrassment, Lena quickly stood up from the piano, bowing her head politely. She felt shy now that the music had stopped. The applause felt overwhelming and she didn't know how to respond. She wanted to return to her normal work, but people kept clapping, so she stood there quietly until the noise finally softened. The manager hurried over, still amazed. "Lena, why didn't you tell us you could play like this?" he asked, almost out of breath. She gave a small smile. "I didn't think it mattered," she said softly. "It's just something I used to do." "Used to?" he repeated. "It sounds like something you've been doing all your life." Before Lena could answer, a customer approached her, a middle-aged man with kind eyes. "That was beautiful," he said warmly. "You play with so much feeling. Have you been trained?" Lena nodded shyly. "My grandfather taught me. I learned from him since I was a child." The customer smiled. "Well, he taught you well?" "Truly well." More people approached her, thanking her for the music, asking where she learned it, and telling her how much they enjoyed hearing her play. Lena tried to answer everyone politely, though she felt overwhelmed by the sudden attention. She wasn't used to so many eyes on her. All her life, she had been someone who stood quietly on the side, never. The center of the room, the wealthy group watched everything from their table. Some of them avoided eye contact with her, embarrassed by the way they had treated her earlier. One woman forced a small smile and waved at Lena when she looked their way, but her expression was awkward. The man who had joked the loudest earlier looked down at his plate, pretending to be busy. Eventually, the manager gently placed a hand on Lena's shoulder. "Take a moment," he whispered. "You deserve it." She nodded, grateful for the chance to breathe. As the night went on, people kept talking about her performance. Even after she went back to serving tables, customers treated her differently. They thanked her more warmly, smiled more genuinely, and some even gave bigger tips. Lena appreciated the kindness, but she tried to stay humble. She didn't want the attention to change how she worked. Later that evening, when most of the crowd had settled down and the kitchen was preparing the last few orders, a man from the wealthy group stood up and walked toward her. He was one of the quiet ones from the group, older than the rest, and he hadn't mocked her earlier. He offered her a gentle smile. "You play beautifully," he said. "Truly, I apologize for how some of my friends behaved earlier." Lena nodded politely. "It's okay," she said. "Thank you for listening." He hesitated for a moment, then added, "You know, there's a music academy I'm connected to. The director is a close friend of mine. They value talent like yours. If you're ever interested, I could introduce you." Lena froze for a second, unsure how to react. "Me?" she asked, surprised. "I don't think I'm good enough for something like that." The man shook his head. "You're more than good enough. Trust me." She smiled shyly. "Thank you. I'll think about it." He nodded respectfully and returned to his table. Even after he walked away, his words lingered in her mind. She had never imagined such an opportunity. The idea of joining an academy felt like a dream, something too big, too far from her current life. She didn't know if she deserved it or if she could afford it. Still, the thought warmed her heart. The night slowly approached closing time. The restaurant calmed down again. The tables were half empty and the noise level returned to its usual soft chatter. The staff cleaned up, stacking plates and wiping surfaces. Lena moved around quietly, thinking about everything that had happened. She walked past the piano again and paused. Her fingers gently touched the edge of the instrument. She remembered how scared she had felt before playing and how different she felt now. She had expected to embarrass herself, not amaze people. She had expected judgment, not applause. For the first time in a long while, Lena felt proud of herself. Not because of the compliments, but because she had done something brave. She had stepped out of her comfort zone and shown a part of herself she had hidden for years before leaving for the night. The manager approached her with a small smile. "I want to talk tomorrow," he said. "I have some ideas." Lena nodded. "Okay, sir." He smiled. "Get some rest, and Lena—" That was the best music this place has ever heard. She felt her heart warm at those words. "Thank you," she whispered, when she finally stepped out of the restaurant and walked home under the streetlights. She felt lighter than she had in years. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but she knew one thing for sure: playing the piano again had awakened something inside her. Something she thought she had lost, and deep down she sensed that tonight was only the beginning. When Lena returned to the restaurant the next day, the atmosphere felt different. People looked at her with softer eyes, as if they were seeing her for the first time. Some of the regular customers greeted her warmly, saying things like, "We loved your music last night," or "You surprised everyone, Lena?" She tried to smile politely at each comment, though inside she still felt a bit shy. She wasn't used to so much attention. The manager called her into the office before her shift officially started. She walked in nervously, wondering if she had done something wrong. But the moment she sat down, he grinned at her. "I've worked in restaurants for years," he said, folding his arms proudly. "And I've never seen a reaction like the one you got last night." Lena lowered her eyes. "I didn't expect any of it," she said softly. "I just wanted to help." "You didn't just help," he replied. "You transformed the entire room. I'm telling you." The place felt different. People were calmer, happier. Even the staff worked better because the whole mood changed. Lena didn't know how to respond, so she just nodded. The manager continued, "Listen, I was thinking maybe we should let you play on weekends, just for a short time each evening. You won't lose your job as a waitress, but people will enjoy it. And honestly, it would help the restaurant too." Lena felt her heart jump. She never imagined being invited to play music as part of her job. "But sir," she said, unsure, "are you sure customers would want that?" "I don't want to disturb anyone." "Disturb?" He laughed. "They nearly cried when you stopped playing." She smiled shyly, still unsure but touched by his confidence in her. "We'll talk more later," he said gently. "No pressure. You think about it?" She nodded again and got up to begin her shift. As the day went on, the memory of last night replayed in her mind over and over: the silence in the room, the shock, the applause. She could still feel her fingers moving across the keys. It was strange, she thought, how something she had kept hidden for years suddenly became the most visible part of her. During the lunch hour, a couple walked in. They had been there the previous night and recognized her immediately. As she took their order, the woman smiled and said, "You have no idea how your music made our evening. We were arguing before coming here, but after listening to you, we felt calm again." The man nodded in agreement. "You have something special, Lena." Lena thanked them with a small smile, touched by their words. She didn't know her music could change other people's moods. She had always thought it was just something personal, something meaningful only to her. Later in the afternoon, while she was wiping a table near the piano, she gently ran her fingers along the edge of the wooden frame. For years she had convinced herself she didn't have time for music anymore. That life was too busy, that dreams were only for people who had the luxury to chase them. But deep inside she had always missed it. She remembered mornings when she would wake up early just to practice before school. She remembered her grandfather's patient smile as he corrected her mistakes. She remembered the pride she felt the first time she played a full piece without stumbling. She missed those days. She missed the feeling of being connected to something that was hers alone. She also remembered the day everything changed. After her grandfather passed away, her home became quiet. Bills started piling up and she took whatever work she could find. Music slowly became less important as real life demanded more from her. She kept telling herself she would return to it one day, but she kept waiting and time kept passing. Now, years later, one unexpected moment had brought her back to the piano. That evening, as customers filled the restaurant again, people spoke softly about the performance from the night before. Someone at one table said they had seen a short video online of Lena playing. Apparently, another customer had recorded her last night and posted it. Lena felt nervous when she heard that, but also excited. She wondered how many people had watched it. Around dinner time, the restaurant grew busy again. When Lena walked past a group of students, one of them recognized her from the video and whispered loudly, "That's her! That's the girl who played the piano." She instantly felt her cheeks flush, but she forced a calm smile as she placed dishes on their table. "Was that really you?" one of the girls asked. "You played so beautifully." "Thank you," Lena said softly. "I'm glad you enjoyed it." The students smiled excitedly as she walked away. She felt the warmth of their admiration, but also the heaviness of attention. She wasn't used to people noticing her so much. She had lived most of her life quietly, and now everything felt different. Later, when the dinner crowd was loud and busy, the wealthy group from last night walked in again, except this time without the joking or arrogance. They were quieter, more respectful. Some of them avoided her eyes, ashamed of how they had treated her. The man who had apologized last night smiled gently when he saw her. She greeted them politely and took their order. "You're quite talented," he said again as she wrote down the items. "My offer still stands. If you ever want to explore music seriously, I can help." Lena nodded gratefully. "I really appreciate it," she said, still unsure whether she was brave enough to accept such help. As she walked away, one of the younger women from the group grabbed the man's arm and whispered, "She's really amazing." "We judged her too quickly." He nodded quietly. "Yes, we did." The night continued, and once the crowd reduced a bit, the manager approached Lena. "Would you like to play for just 5 minutes?" he asked softly. "Only if you want to." Her heart raced, not out of fear, but out of anticipation. She nodded slowly. "Okay, I can play one piece." The moment she sat down at the piano, the restaurant grew a little calmer. People recognized her and began to quiet down even before she touched the keys. Lena closed her eyes and let her fingers find their place. She didn't choose a difficult piece. She chose a gentle one she used to play for her grandfather when he was tired or stressed. Something soft and warm. As she played, emotion filled the room. The slow, graceful notes settled into the air like a soft breeze. Someone near the door stopped in the middle of a conversation. A child leaned forward, curious. A couple held hands under the table. Even the chefs in the kitchen paused for a moment. There was something magical about the way she played, not perfect, not showy, but honest. Every note sounded like a memory shared without words. Her music didn't just sound nice, it made people feel something. When the piece ended, the restaurant erupted into applause again, but this time it felt even more heartfelt. People clapped not because they were surprised, but because they were moved. Some even stood up and clapped from their tables. Lena's eyes watered slightly, but she quickly blinked the tears away. The wealthy group clapped the loudest, the man nodding proudly as if he had known her for years. Lena bowed her head slightly and returned to work. She didn't want to stand in the spotlight for too long, for the rest of the night. The customers treated her with extra kindness. Someone left a note under their plate saying, "Never stop playing." Another person wrote on a napkin, "Your music touched my heart tonight." A few even asked the manager if Lena would be playing again next week. When the restaurant finally closed, the staff gathered to clean. But instead of the usual tired silence, everyone seemed cheerful. One of the waiters joked, "You've become famous now, Lena?" Another said, "Don't forget us when you go big." Lena laughed softly. "I'm not going anywhere," she said, but deep down she knew something inside her had changed. The piano, the applause, the attention, it all felt overwhelming but also meaningful. She realized that music wasn't just a part of her past. It was still part of her identity, and maybe it was time to stop hiding it. As she walked home under the streetlights again, she felt a strange sense of hope. Maybe life had more in store for her than she once believed. Maybe the dreams she had buried didn't disappear. Maybe they were just waiting for the right moment to return, and now they were finally waking up. The days that followed felt like a quiet storm in Lena's life. On the outside, everything looked the same. She still tied her apron every morning, still wiped tables, still served customers with her calm, gentle smile. But inside her heart, something had shifted. It felt like she was walking with a new kind of energy, a new spark she hadn't felt in years. Each morning when she stepped into the restaurant, her eyes naturally drifted toward the old piano, and a warm wave of emotion washed over her. The customers didn't forget about her performance. If anything, more and more people came because of it. Some customers would ask, "Is Lena playing today?" Others would purposely sit near the piano, hoping she might play again if the manager allowed it. The manager noticed the change in the restaurant, too. Sales had increased, the atmosphere felt more welcoming, and people talked about the place with excitement. One evening, after a busy shift, the manager approached her again. He held a small envelope in his hand. "This is for you," he said. Lena looked at him with surprise and opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a bonus much bigger than she expected. She stared at it for a moment, confused. "Sir? What is this?" she asked. "It's from last weekend," he answered. "Some customers left extra tips just for you. And I added something from the restaurant, too. It's not much, but I hope it shows how much we appreciate your talent." Lena felt her eyes sting with emotion. She shook her head softly and said, "You didn't have to do this." He smiled. "I wanted to. And honestly, you earned it." She thanked him quietly, though words didn't feel enough. She had never been given something like this before. Most of her life, she had worked hard without expecting extra rewards. Now, her music, something she had loved since childhood, was opening doors she never knew existed. Later that night, as she walked home, she held the envelope close to her chest. She kept thinking about the man from the wealthy group who had offered to introduce her to the music academy. His words had been echoing in her mind for days. At first she pushed the idea away, thinking it was too big for someone like her. But the more she played, and the more people reacted to her music, the more she wondered if maybe, just maybe, her dream wasn't impossible after all. The next week, the man returned to the restaurant. This time he was alone, dressed casually and without the loud group he'd been with earlier. He waited until she was free, and when she walked over to his table, he smiled warmly. "I hoped you'd be here today," he said. "I wanted to talk to you about the academy again." Lena sat down quietly, wiping her hands on her apron nervously. "I've been thinking about it," she admitted. "But I don't know if I'm ready for something like that. It sounds too big." He shook his head gently. "You're ready? You just don't believe it yet." She looked down at her hands. "But what if I fail? What if I'm not good enough?" "You won't know until you try," he said softly. "And even if you're scared, that's okay? Every talented person feels fear before taking a big step. But talent like yours shouldn't stay hidden." His words touched her more deeply than he knew. She had spent years hiding her music, convincing herself she wasn't good enough to pursue it. Now people were telling her the opposite, and she didn't know how to handle the sudden shift. "I can set up an audition for you," he continued. "You don't need to commit to anything now. Just meet them, play one piece, and see how you feel." Lena hesitated for a long moment. Her heart was beating fast, but deep down a small voice whispered, "Try." "Okay," she finally said. "I will go." The man smiled with relief. "I'll arrange everything." When he left, Lena took a deep breath. Her hands were trembling, not from fear, but from excitement. It felt unreal, like she was stepping into a part of life she had forgotten how to dream about. The following week, she prepared for the audition quietly. She didn't tell many people, not her coworkers, not the customers, not even the manager. She practiced after her shifts, staying behind in the empty restaurant when everyone went home. The manager allowed her to use the piano anytime she wanted. Every night, she sat alone, letting the warm notes fill the empty space. Some nights she played softly, lost in memories of her grandfather. Other nights she played faster pieces, testing her speed and accuracy. She wasn't perfect, but she played with feeling. She didn't want to impress the academy with fancy techniques. She wanted to show them who she was. The night before the audition, her nerves grew stronger. She barely slept. She lay awake, thinking of everything that might go wrong. But in the morning, when she stood in front of the academy building, she felt strangely calm. The building was large and elegant, with glass doors and tall windows. Inside, she could hear faint music, someone practicing a violin, another person playing scales on a piano. She felt like she had stepped into a different world. The man who had arranged the audition met her at the entrance. "I'm glad you came," he said. "They're ready for you?" She followed him down a quiet hallway until they reached a small room with a grand piano inside. 3 people sat behind a table, teachers from the academy. They nodded politely as she entered. "Please play anything you feel comfortable with," one of them said. Lena sat down at the piano, her heart beating loudly in her ears. She placed her fingers on the keys and took a deep breath. She thought of her grandfather's warm smile, the dusty old piano in the restaurant, the applause of the customers, the encouragement from strangers, and then she began to play. She didn't think about the notes or the room or the judges watching her. She played with her heart. The melody rose softly at first, then grew fuller. The room seemed to shrink around her, leaving only her and the music. When she finished, she lifted her hands gently off the keys. The room stayed quiet for a moment. Then one of the teachers spoke softly. "Where have you been hiding all these years?" Lena smiled shyly. "I wasn't hiding," she said. "Life just took me in another direction." The teachers exchanged impressed glances. Another one spoke. "Your playing has emotion. It's honest. That's rare." The older teacher leaned forward. "If you are willing, we would like to offer you a place in our evening program. It's for people who work during the day but still want to study music seriously." Lena felt her breath catch. "You mean I can join?" "Yes," he said warmly. "You can start next month?" Her eyes filled with tears. It didn't feel real. But it was. When she walked out of the academy that day, she felt lighter than ever before. The man who had helped her smiled proudly. "I knew you could do it." Lena nodded, wiping a tear from her cheek. "Thank you for everything." When she returned to the restaurant that evening, the manager noticed her glowing expression immediately. "You look different," he said. "Did something good happen?" Lena smiled. "Yes, something very good." She told him everything: the audition, the offer, the classes. The manager listened with wide eyes, then hugged her gently. "I'm proud of you," he said. "And don't worry. We'll work around your class schedule. Your dream is worth it." Lena felt grateful beyond words. In the weeks that followed, the restaurant embraced her dream. Customers encouraged her, the staff supported her, and the manager adjusted her shifts so she could attend evening classes. Every weekend, she still played for the customers who came to hear her. Every weekday, she practiced at the academy. Her life didn't suddenly become perfect, it became meaningful. And one evening, after finishing a beautiful piece at the restaurant, the customers clapped warmly. Lena looked around the room and realized something important. They didn't see her as just a waitress anymore. They saw her as someone with passion, talent, and a story worth believing in. She smiled softly, her eyes shining. All it had taken was one brave moment and everything changed.